Hello everyone and welcome to my channel where I talk about data protection compliance in Nigeria. My name is Lazarus Kalu and I'm a data protection and technology lawyer in Nigeria. If this is your first time joining us, please subscribe, like and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of my episodes. Today's episode, we'll be talking about the principles of data protection. So, in the previous episode, we talked about the scope of the Nigerian Data Protection Act. So, today, we'll talk about the principles that you must follow in order to handle or process personal data of your customers, your employees, or any person. So, if you're processing personal data in your business or wherever endeavor you are involved in, you must comply with these principles. So the number one principle is that personal data must be processed lawfully, fairly, and in a transparent manner. What does this mean? So in the next episode, we'll be talking about the legal grounds for processing, and there are 6 of them. So the principle that your processing activity must be lawful means that your activity, whatever you are doing, must meet or comply with one of the grounds for lawful processing. And apart from that, whatever you are doing with personal data must comply with all applicable laws. For example, within the context of employment law, when a prospective employee has applied, the law allows the employer to carry out background check, perhaps look at the health of the employer, of the prospective employee, to see if the person is fit to carry out or discharge his or her obligations. But there is a law that prohibits employers from carrying out HIV tests of prospective employees and employees. So if you require such tests, or if you request employees to do such tests, you will be violating that law, and your processing activity in that regard will be unlawful. Speaking as to fairness, fairness relates to when you are processing the personal data, you must be fair, you must be just, and you must not do it in a way that will shock or surprise the data subject. And speaking to transparency, transparency requires that the data subject must be aware that you are processing his or her personal data, and the data subject must also know why you are processing it, how long you want to process it, and all this information you must give it to the data subject before you start processing. So you must be open with your data protection practices. So that is a summary of the first principle. The second principle is called the purpose limitation. And what does this mean? It means that you must collect or process personal data for a specific legitimate purpose. So if you are collecting or using someone's data for a particular purpose, you can only use that personal data for that purpose and for no other purpose. If you need to process it for another purpose, you must let that person know, and you must get the person's consent before you can use it for another purpose. So that is it about purpose limitation. And then the third principle is accuracy, which means that the information you are going to process, the personal data that you are collecting or using in your business, you must make sure that it is accurate and it is complete and is not misleading. And so this means that regularly you must have a process to update the information and make sure that everything is in order, that incomplete information is completed, outdated information is updated, and all that. So that has to do with accuracy principle. Then the next principle is data minimization. And what does this mean? This means that in the process of collecting, using, and storing people's personal data, you are only required by law to use what is relevant and what is limited for your purpose. The second principle we talked about was purpose limitation. When I say that you collect or process information for an identified specific purpose. Now, in data minimization, that particular information you are collecting must be relevant for that purpose. If it is not relevant, you can't collect it. Let me give you an example. Say, for example, you are into delivery. You are doing a business that delivers people's products or orders from your end to the person's house. All you need to do this is the person's name, person's phone number, and the person's address. You don't need information as to the person's religion or date of birth. So that's what data minimization speaks to. Collect the information that is only relevant for your purpose. So the next principle we'll be talking about today is storage limitation. And what does this mean? This means that you store the information you have collected for a limited period. You can't store it forever. It's not your own. So you are going to store it for an identified period of time, which is relevant for your purpose. So if you are collecting information for a particular purpose, once that purpose has been achieved, there is no need for you to keep that information. So you have to let go the information by deleting it. So that's the storage principle. Then the next principle we're talking about is security. So in the process of handling people's information, you have to make sure that you have adequate processes in place, adequate measures in place to secure the information you have collected, because you don't want the information you have collected to fall into wrong hands. You don't want it to be accidentally destroyed or damaged or disclosed to unauthorized persons. So this particular law makes sure, this particular principle makes sure that you put in organizational measures and technical measures in place to secure the information that you are processing. In addition to these principles, you must demonstrate. The law calls it the accountability principle. You must not just say that you are doing these things. You must show how you are doing them. So it's not enough to have it in your books or wherever that you are complying. You must show that this and this and other this and this are what you are doing to comply with these principles. And one way to do all these things is in your privacy policy, in your documentation policies, in your retention policies. So there are certain documentations you need to put in place to ensure that these principles are being followed within your organizations. And if in the process of handling people's information you fail to comply with any of these requirements or principles, there is a penalty prescribed, as we spoke about in the first episode. And I know that you don't want to be penalized by the regulator. So try and comply with these principles. So if you have any questions as to how you can comply with these principles, do not hesitate to send me a message or drop a comment, and I will respond to your messages and your comments accordingly. This brings us to the end of today's episode. If you have not subscribed, please do so, and I would like to see you in the next episode.